There's an old saying in motorsport, if you want to make $1 million, start with $1 billion.
You got to work your way up. You got to have talent. Ultimately, you have to be born with an ability to drive the car fast. I think you have to be practical, pragmatic. You have to be able to bounce back from a lot of setbacks, because you'll have 9 bad days for every one day. But the joy you feel on that one day makes up for the other 9.
It's probably one of the toughest sports, mentally, physically, and many people crack, many people move aside and fade away. But if you want to sustain, then you have to really fight it.
You have to be fearless. You are always fighting against, and you don't think about what could happen when things go really wrong.
If you don't have that little bit of craziness in you, it's not going to really work out long term.
My mind, I always use the aggressive approach. If you don't want to move forward, you always end up going backwards.
For me, it's always a great experience, motorsports, because you smell the tires, you smell the oil, you smell the excitement of the drivers, and it's just car pure.
It also goes as a big sacrifice in terms of your career, because you're into something which is not conventional, and it's not going to give you too much of returns monetary, at least not in the short term. Where your friends are, doing masters, living in the US, making a lot of money. You're here doing your thing that you love, which is not really giving you back in monetary terms, but you definitely go back home and sleep good because you're doing what you love at the end of the day.
The driver needs to extract every last fraction of a second, otherwise they're not going to win.
Welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new series called The Driving Force. In this series, we will be giving you an in-depth insight about everything about Indian motorsport. But before we get to all of that, let me tell you about one city that is so very close to the hearts of everyone in the Indian motorsport community. The city in question is Coimbatore.
Now, to many people, Coimbatore may come across as one of the most industrialized cities in the state of Tamil Nadu. However, there is much more to this city, which has also enjoyed a romantic history with motorsports in India.
It is firmly believed that the marker for modern-day Indian motorsport was laid down here in this very city. But if you're wondering, well, how did all this happen? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Let's have a look.
If one wants to trace down the history of motorsports in India, it goes well before independence. In fact, the first official motorsports club in India, the Calcutta Motorsports Club, was started way back in 1904. However, in the earlier years, motorsport was majorly seen as a mere recreational hobby. It was only in the 1960s and 70s that it came together as an organized sport in India, with the help of many racing families like the Chandoks, the Mainis, the Patels, the Malias, and many more. However, among all the pioneers, one name stands out: Sundaram Currywarden, popularly known as Curry. Curry was born in an illustrious textile family of Lakshmi Mills in Coimbatore. Earlier, from his school days, his obsession with cars and racing was pretty much evident. Coming from a racing family and extremely inspired by his uncle G.K. Rajgopal, who was the former president of the FMSCI, it was natural for young Curry to follow his passion.
He brought the interest of racing into me. He was brilliant. He was a brilliant driver. And I remember one day we went for a drive and it was raining. That's when I saw superb car control. When you're driving 10-10, that's when the passion really starts. That's how I got into this game. We were, I think, 13 or 14 years old then.
As he grew up, Curry started racing in saloon cars, and his very first one was a Fiat. Not only was he quick, but his ability to set up and develop the car stood out among the others. Later, Curry finished his education and also went to the Jim Russell Racing School in the UK, where he honed his racing skills. In the late 70s and the early 80s, Curry, along with the likes of Vicky Chandok, Harish Samtani, B. Vijay Kumar, Vijay Mallya and many more, was a regular feature in the races taking place on the racetracks in Cholavaram, Madras, Coimbatore and Barrackpore.
He came back to India and he first raced with the Datsun car, Datsun 510, and rallied with the Datsun 510. He in fact fixed the first turbocharger in a Datsun 510 car and drove many rallies. And in the year 1980, he decided to build a single-seater Formula car. That was the first single-seater Formula car built and raced by him in India, called the Datsun Special, with a Datsun engine, with a Hewland gearbox. The Hewland gearbox had to be imported. And after that, his main aim was to see to it that racing talent all over the country come up.
Curry was also someone for whom winning alone was not important. He genuinely cared about the upliftment of motorsports in India. His creative and brilliant mind made him do things that were way ahead of time. With the advent of the Maruti car, Currywarden became the first person to develop an indigenous Formula car in India, and it was called the Formula Maruti.
Someday, 1988 or 1989, Mr. Currywarden turned up at my home. He lives in a neighborhood with the Formula India single-seater Maruti. And the first time I'm seeing something like this, I didn't know what it was, so he explained to me and he asked me to test drive the car at the local airport. I found it quite nice and explained to him what I felt it was like to drive. And I had forgotten about it. A month or two later, he gives me a call and says, "We have a car for you, would you come and drive it?" So I said, I'll think about it, and then I was persuaded by my friends, so I turned up at Cholavaram to test drive the car.
It has to be noted that the Formula Maruti opened up a lot of avenues for motorsport fanatics to pursue a career in motor racing, as it was much more affordable than the conventional options. The likes of Narain Karthikeyan and Karun Chandok, the only two Formula 1 drivers that India has produced, mastered the Formula Maruti series before they moved outside India to compete in the upper echelons of Formula racing.
And came back into racing when Mr. Currywarden developed the first Indian Formula car, which was called the Formula Maruti. And I think in 1988, we raced in Cholavaram. And I was guided, mentored by the late Mr. Currywarden, and who took me into the Lakshmi Mills racing team, which then became a combination of the Lakshmi JK racing team.
What Curry did was simply phenomenal. His untimely death did hamper the racing progress in India, but in the last few years, things have become better. With more corporate support and sponsors, the motor racing scene in India is currently strong and is brimming with talent. This very track of Coimbatore, named after Sundaram Currywarden, is known as the Curry Motor Speedway and is one of the three major tracks in India, along with Chennai and Delhi. India also successfully hosted Formula 1 for 3 years at the Bodh International Circuit and put itself on the international map as far as the pinnacle of motor racing is concerned. However, a lot is yet to be done. Motorsports requires a lot of budget and support to thrive, and India will need that kind of support in the coming years to produce world champions.
We are a cricket mad nation. So getting the sponsorship you need and the backing you need to carry on your trajectory towards Formula One is the biggest limitation for young drivers from here. Typically, sponsors tend to flock first towards cricket, and then everything else gets the leftovers in some ways, which is a shame. I think there's no easy answer as to how to go out there to raise funds. But I think what will be nice is if manufacturers such as Volkswagen, such as Renault, such as Mercedes, these are all global players in the world of motorsport. If they can create some sort of ladder, some sort of progression for young drivers from India, that might open up opportunities for the future.
With a similar vision, automobile giant Volkswagen has been one of the front-runners when it comes to promoting racing in India. This year also marks a decade of the company's involvement in Indian motorsports. Moreover, Volkswagen still is the only car manufacturer directly involved in motorsports in India.
The idea of Volkswagen as a brand is to support and grow motorsport because we find it to be a very integral part of our DNA. It is where we test ideas, we are developing new products and new sort of designs through the motorsport platform.
It has given exposure to our youngsters. It makes it affordable for most people, the series that we run. Otherwise, motorsports can be fairly expensive. So it's a good launch platform for youngsters in India, and there is a lot of talent in India.
Volkswagen Motorsports has been a pivotal part of the history of motorsports in India. So we've been here for 10 years now, and we've been kind of creating the journey. We've been very much focusing on young drivers in order to create also a wider scale in this country.
Once Volkswagen came into motorsport in 2010, it brought a whole new level of professionalism into the sport. And that was something that was not seen earlier in India. Thankfully, a lot of other companies have realized that this is now the bar, and everyone has raised the game by and large.
So now that we know that Volkswagen have been at the forefront of marrying style and technology into an absolute beast of a car for over the last 10 years, it's about time, ladies and gentlemen, that I present to you the main machines for this year's championship. Behold, ladies and gentlemen, the 2019 Volkswagen Emu. This Emu for the 2019 championship is the real deal. From the outside, it may look like a fancy version of any other Emu road car. But let me tell you this, there is much more to it than just that. This has an 1800cc engine with 205 brake horsepower. That is almost double the power that you get from the normal Emu. It can go at a maximum speed of 220 kilometers per hour. And again, that is much quicker than the normal Emu. So how do these Emus actually achieve such a high level of performance on the track? Well, the answer is quite simple. They are tuned specifically for motorsport, and that just brings us to our very next topic, car tuning. So to know more about this, let's go to someone who has been in this business for a very, very long time.
A lot of people think it's about building a good engine and you can go racing. I'm sorry to say that's the last of the worries actually. When you're building a car, first you have to look at all the safety angles. All the safety precautions, the roll cage and seats and belts and fire extinguishing system and the basic integrity of the car, all of those have to be looked at, and you have to build the car. Then you have to work on various aspects of the car. It is the vehicle dynamics, which is the suspension, brakes and all that stuff, and then transmission side, and then the last you come up to the engine bit. It's not just one aspect, it's all the aspects of the car, which is very important. and to the extent that when you build a car, it's not about, you have to build a strong car. A strong car doesn't mean a heavy car. You have to build a strong car as light as you can. So that's very important, and reliability is very important. Going around a corner is very important. And there are different aspects in the suspension as well. It's about the suspension geometry, the dampers and springs and the overall setup of the car. And to cap it all up, then you have to make sure it works with the driver. As an engineer, we can build a car saying that this is the way the car has to go around a corner and this is how it has to be driven. Many times, the driver might not be, his driving style might not suit exactly the way you design the car. That's why if you see, the cars, so same teammates, it works well with one driver and doesn't work well with another driver. So it's very important that you also understand, what is the driver's requirement, his style of driving, and make sure that the car and the driver work as a package. And the package has to be a winning package. Not all race cars are tuned exactly the same way because it's an individual touch. Like each one has a philosophy of how the car has to be built, and based on their understanding of the car and what their driver wants. It's never the same. It's very, very different from one to another.
Well, that was a very good insight. Leela gave us a good idea about car tuning in general. Now, every car is tuned differently to extract the maximum performance out of it. Similarly, these RMUs have been tuned differently as well. To know more about the science behind it, let's hear from one of the key personnel involved in this master process.
The race MEUs you see here are built around our extremely fun to drive road cars. It's extremely modified to a tune that is more than 200% powerful than the road car, and every single functional component has been engineered to handle abuse, speed and advancement in technology which current racing series see all over the world. The engine which we use here is out of a VW GTI, which is 1800cc and puts out 189 bhp on the road car, and we've modified it to put out 205 bhp in the race car to accommodate competitive conditions. Coming to the handling side of things, the suspension and brakes are very critical. As you see, the brakes used here are out of a VW Golf road car. They are very big compared to a road-going Indian MEU. This is done so that the race drivers have exceptional amount of stopping power to the race distance. And coming to the dampers and springs, they are modified to ensure that the cars can go through the corners with extreme speed and good control. Coming to safety, our road cars are already safe in terms of very good NCAP ratings, but to add to racing conditions, we have a very primary part of that safety, which is starting with roll cage. We build these roll cages for race cars to FIA standards, and these members you see here are the critical points of the roll cage, which ensure that during a crash or rollover, the car's cockpit does not crumble. The next safety part would be the seat. This is a lightweight high-strength seat with a particular design such that the driver's body does not move during a crash or an impact, and that is ensured by the seat belt, which is a 6-point FIA approved harness which holds the driver down to the seat. These things ensure that the driver's body is completely packed along with the seat. In case of any impact or any roll or a crash, the driver doesn't move. And the next part would be the safety net, which is over here, which covers the driver's window, so that in case of a roll or multiple amounts of crashes, the driver's hands doesn't go off the window, injuring or maiming him. The final safety feature of the car is the fire extinguishing system, which starts with the red cylinder behind, as you see. This is a cockpit actuated mechanism, and the driver, once he presses the red button in case of an emergency, the foam is shot out to the nozzles inside the cabin and at the engine bay. This gives the driver just about time to ensure that he can escape without taking more burn injuries. Along with the safety features we spoke about inside the car, you would have noticed that there is no damping, there is no plastic trims, carpets or mats. These are removed to ensure that there is no material which can feed a fire in terms of an emergency. And these materials being removed will give you a weight advantage of up to 70 to 80 kilos compared to a road MEU, which accounts to a 1 second per lap lead. And then to the end of the race, that accounts for 15 seconds. And that's in the racing scenario is a very, very, very extreme timeline.
So now that we know about these gems,
that are hidden under the bonnet of the Emu Cup car. It's about time, ladies and gentlemen, that I take you around to some of the champs that will be bossing these cars around on the circuit for the upcoming season of the Volkswagen Emu Cup Championship.
Lots at stake because it's a national championship.
I'm Saurabh, I'm a race driver.
I'm Anuranjan, I'm a professional racing driver.
My name is Ayush Tainwala. Racing has been a new passion of mine.
My name is Siddharth Mendirata and I started racing last year.
We might be friends off the track, but definitely on the track, we're rivals. If you can't lose, then don't race. Go home.
It is not only about aggression. Aggression can take you places. Calculated aggression will get you podiums.
If you don't aim for the first, there's no second, there's no third. I'm just hoping for another clean race. I should be serious on the track and I should be serious on the throttles and brakes.
You won't be surprised, there will be massive action all over the place.
So yeah, it should be fun tomorrow.
With all the 18 racers raring to go, the stage for glory is set and the drama is ready to unfold. Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. This one isn't for the faint-hearted.